Oh, here we go. Okay. There's Andy.
Yes. Oh, there he is. Good. Right. So why don't you redo the roll call?
Yes,
Mhm.
sure. So Brian Holmes,
Here.
Brad Reed,
Here.
Liz Hutchins,
Here.
Andy Kishitz.
Looks like you're on mute, Andy. How about, why don't you go skip to Gabrielle?
Gabriella Mono. Here. And Gerard Ahern.
Present? Yep.
Is Andy Kishitz here?
He appears to be here, but let's see. I can't unmute him, but I know last hearing he had a problem with his video, but it seems like he's logged in at least. For purposes of opening the hearing, can we open with this roll call and we can add Andy if he comes on off mute?
Is this
I'm here.
Andy? Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. There he is.
Excellent.
Thanks, Andy. All right, so this is the continuation of the special permit application for 713 Main. It's a continuation from 5/12, and so I know we had some questions with the applicant outstanding after last hearing, trying to look at the individual structures and determine maybe individual uses for each one, so we have a better idea of what we're going to permit, and then we'll have a status update on the barn, because I think we had a letter from, I know we had a letter from the building inspector from 4/28 indicating the disrepair of the barn and the unsafety of it, and requesting sort of immediate attention toward taking the barn down. So just we'll have to have some confirmation about that, and then maybe agree on what's going to be in its place within the same footprint and things like that. So, and then we can also, be sure we had a previous decision on and included a bunch of conditions for those 3 properties. And I'd like to just confirm whether the bulk of those would still remain with this decision as well. So, Tim, why don't you give us any updates you have, and then we'll go from there.
That's great, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. So yeah, why don't we start with updates on the barn? The building inspector, Mike Savageau, did issue a letter that you referred to, indicating that the barn was a safety hazard to the public. He got agreement with that from the fire chief. We are in receipt of that letter and working now with the Conservation Commission to resolve the necessary conditions to satisfy them that the resource areas will be protected throughout demolition. We had hoped initially that they might let me see if I can remember the phrase, that they might issue an emergency certification, which I understand is within their purview. They have chosen not to do that. My sense is that they felt that it would be more appropriate to reserve such certification for something more akin to a natural disaster, and felt it was not a good fit in this case. They requested that we file instead the full notice of intent, and we have done that as of maybe a week ago. I'm forgetting, several days back. We completed the, let's call it a robust 30-some page notice of intent application. And we are eagerly awaiting our hearing with them. So that's the barn.
And so with
I
that,
should also-
is that the only, like the notice intent with the Concom? So there'd be nothing have to do with historical commission, I think it said in that letter, correct?
Yeah, the Historic Commission is, what's the right phrase for it? Once the building inspector issued that emergency letter, we're no longer subject to the demolition delay bylaw.
You're right.
We have had a couple of pretty constructive conversations with that commission, and particularly with the chair. And of course, I can't put words in their mouth, but it was my very clear understanding that they were comfortable with the removal of the barn. Craig has purchased the timber frame of another antique barn a few hours to the north. I always forget whether it's Maine or New Hampshire. But that barn is sized in such a way that we believe we can re-erect it, or I suppose raise is the right term for a barn, there on the same footprint, and that's our plan. Other ongoing business with the Conservation Commission, we also have an open request for determination of applicability on the 7-Eleven building, and that's the blue building, the former antique store. And we're requesting that our proposed additions and alterations to that building are so minor as to not require a notice of intent for the renovations there. The bulk of that work, just for context, the bulk of that work is an interior renovation. There are 2 small additions. One of them is limited to adding a second floor over an existing first floor, so there's no additional sort of incursion toward a resource area, no additional footprint. Another of the additions, the second of the 2 additions, is a small addition, a kind of a linear, I call it a saddlebag addition to the west or into our courtyard, taking roughly the same footprint of a previous addition that had been there, pardon me, into probably the mid-70s or a bit later, and then shortly thereafter removed. But in that this is moves to the west and therefore not to the north. The resource areas, both the stream and the wetlands, are to the north of the building, and so this small addition to the west, in our opinion, would not pose an additional risk to the resource area.
So when you talk about the antique building, just to put it in context with like the former special permit, talked about the barn, the Ebenezer townhouse, and the single family sort of home. So when you say is that the former Ebenezer townhouse, or is that new to you?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I'm hearing everything exactly that you're saying. I gather that the gist of your question is about the relationship of the 3 buildings. And so the one that's sort of historically the Ebenezer townhouse is 713. That's the gray building that's got the candle shop in it currently, and is a couple other uses. And then what we call the blue building at 7-Eleven, that would be the Ebenezer Town Shop, or what had later been post office and several other commercial or institutional uses.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So my recollection and my notes suggest that there were 2 primary discussion points that came up when we were together last. One had to do with parking, and the other had to do with the question of context and what did we anticipate really throughout the parcel.
Mhm.
So maybe we start with the use question and throughout the parcel, and then I've got some graphics to help us discuss the parking.
Mhm.
So in terms of use, it's our anticipation that the use that was permitted back in '05 for the barn or for the parcel as a whole indicated that the applicant at that time had in mind to put 2 retail units in the barn. And that's pretty consistent with our intent. You know, the sort of fuller truth of that is that we don't have tenants in mind. We don't have tenants lined up for that. And you know, it's likely, I don't know, a year or more down the road. Conceptually and in spirit, that's our intent, is consistent with that. Is there some chance it might be something else? We don't think that's likely, but Craig, maybe you can jump in if you see me mincing my words too much.
Yeah, you know, as Tim said, this is Craig, by the way. Can you hear me?
Craig, you just identify yourself? Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, Craig Bovaird. So we really haven't identified yet. It's way too soon, but we're talking about, you know, small retail boutique type, cool, you know, whether it be a shop or an ice cream place or you know, a cool coffee shop. I don't know exactly what, but it's going to be in that kind of genre, if you will. You know,
I
I
refer to it
don't,
as cultural commerce.
pardon me, Tim?
I'm just saying the phrase I like for that is cultural commerce.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. Great way to put it. You know, I'm not looking to put another lawyer in there or a dentist or on, you know, any kind of a professional type thing like that. More of a cool retail that's going to have nice traffic, you know, and, you know, things that would draw people from the town to the location.
Right. So, understanding there's probably constraints with either septic or water, or, you know, they were acknowledged in the last special permit that adding additional retail, some single family structure to like one of the homes, and then using the downstairs of the Ebenezer house as potential for retail, that there were limitations based on, you know, the constraints on the property. So some of
Right.
those uses may or may not, you know, if you don't have access to water or septic and things, I don't know. I know there was a
Yeah.
challenge on that property.
Mr. Chair, we've done a little study. You refer to the septic limitations, and that's exactly right. The flow rate is 550 gallons per day, and we've developed a number of scenarios to test what are the possibilities. And I mean, if you'd like, I can share this. I've got it up on my screen now. If you want to get into that, I'm happy to share it. If not, I can just describe that in all the scenarios we're considering, there remains some excess capacity. There's no scenario by which we consume all of the 550.
Okay, all right. Because I think consistent with the previous special permit, we probably have a condition in there that, you know, those regulations would be, you know, have to be complied with, because, you know, the camp permit's going to create a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment, there's a big difference between some kind of a, you know, professional office building and, you know, a coffee shop or something else that's, you know, depending on volume. So, I mean, I think we have to look at the use of the building at some point before, it goes too much further, just to get an idea of, how many cars are going to need to park and what resources have to be provided. So that's my comment.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just before we move on from the septic, I'll just share that to the last speaker's point, the requirement for residential is 110 gallons per day per bedroom.
Mhm.
So a 2-bedroom unit requires 220 gallons a day. Retail requirement is 50 gallons a day. So quite a bit of difference there.
Mhm.
And so, to the advantage of the septic system to have more retail and less residential. Office space is 75 gallons a day.
Mhm.
But sorry, I should say, just to be specific, the apartment flow rate is 110 gallons per day per bedroom. The office and retail are specified in gallons per 1,000 square feet. At any rate, the same point holds. It's advantageous on this very undersized lot to have more office or even better retail in terms of the septic.
So if we can identify in each of the structures what the, targeted intended use is, and like, for example, in the barn, I think in the prior, they said they anticipated approximately 74 square feet would be retail. If we think that you're gonna have limited retail in there, that if we have any ideas on the size of, we've combined, whether it's gonna be 2 or 3 small retails, we could, maybe at least put some parameters around it so we know where, what we're dealing with this permit. And like any other permit, or any, if there's down the road, it needs an amendment or an alteration or a variance, because we dealing with any variances at this point, there's a process to come back to the town and just work through those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shall I share these septic numbers, or shall we move on to parking?
Let's look at the parking, because that, if, depending on the time, we can go back to the septic. I think the point is you're going to acknowledge, comply with whatever septic requirements are on the site, so, maybe we don't have to go through that detail at the moment, but certainly if it hasn't been submitted as part of the process, maybe you should submit it so we can incorporate it into the record.
Yeah, happy to do that. It's been a part of some of our other applications. I can't confirm whether we included it in this one or not. Valerie, maybe that rings a bell with you. I'm not sure.
The parking, I think it may have been referenced, but just understanding that this application is more about the use rather than site design. I think there's not too much in there about it.
Right. And he was talking about also the septic, or how, I think,
Right.
was any of that within any of the information you've had already?
I think that Tim has additional information to share tonight. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
So if I could share my screen, I'll just jump into that now.
Sure.
Great. Okay. So just to flash it, since it's here, you can see this is septic for the whole lot under
Mhm.
3 different scenarios. We did this study with our civil engineers a few months back. So one scenario, if it's a 2-bedroom apartment, which I think we have now confirmed. The other scenario, at that time, we were not certain whether it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and another scenario, the considering what would it do to the flow rates if the apartment were to convert to office space. But at the required rates, if we back up to the left 75 gallons a day per 1,000 square feet. At 1,607 square feet, we get 121 gallons a day. If you follow that down through bedrooms, retail, and office space, you'll see we get to 407 gallons per day. We then kind of work backwards to ask ourselves, given that we've consumed 407 of the 550, how much remainder would be available for barn use? So 550 minus 407 leaves us 143 gallons. Divide that by the, or factor that with the, that would support up to 2,869 square feet of barn area. And given that our barn is 1,200 square feet per floor, that gives us just about 2.5 floors of retail space in the barn. So that same logic kind of carries through the other scenarios, but you can see in these other scenarios, we would have flow rate for, in a retail use, we'd have flow rate for 4 floors of barn, which we don't have and won't have, and then over 4.5, which of course we definitely won't have. So in all 3 of these scenarios, we're pretty comfortable that we're going to satisfy the requirements there for septic. So
the barn there you show is in the barn you show about 2869 square foot. In the prior decision, there was reference to that square footage being usable about 1874. Is that because of the new barn will be have a layout, or it's all going to be within the same footprint? It's just, or they were just probably using less potential.
Yeah, I can't speak for those folks. I would speculate that it might be that they were using less. This 2869 is not a footprint of the barn. It's how much flow rate, how much floor space could be supported by the remaining flow rate, if that makes sense.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So our gross area per floor is just over 1,200.
Okay. Mhm.
Is that helpful?
Yep.
Okay. So let me go now to the parking. I'll stop that share. I'll do a new share here.
Hey, Gerard.
Andy?
Hey, when we talk about flow rates, is there a different determination for if food services are involved? Because I know the applicant mentioned briefly coffee shop or ice cream shop. So I don't know much about the septic issues, but I'm just wondering if there's a different flow rate involved in something that there's food preparation or service involved.
Yeah, I don't know that, Andy. We could maybe see if Valley has that, but I also, when I heard those things, there's some across the street at one point in that historical building where an applicant was given a special permit. They were shying away from those types of uses because they would have to bring water to that premise to be able to have, unless they were serving pre-made coffee and things like that. So I think there were, and I don't know if that's because of the downtown water situation or flow, but I know that would be a challenge.
Yeah, well,
So I
that
don't know
building
if
I
has,
that's
think
that
those
building
type of
has a closed
uses,
tank. Yeah.
I was going to say those type of uses are a concern for both septic and parking,
right.
because
Because-
coffee shop and ice cream are obviously destination places which drive more vehicle traffic.
Yeah, some of them high turnover too. So the cars come up, you go get a cup of coffee, maybe sit around or go get an ice cream, then take off. But yeah, so that's why I think in the former application there was talk about limiting the use so that it would have a limited impact on the parking and have the use more professional versus in particularly retail versus those types of food services type of businesses.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can imagine a scenario where a year from now,
Mhm.
Craig has met a prospective tenant who in any one of a number of ways might require that we come back and talk with you
Mhm.
guys and try to explain why and how we think that that other tenant might be a good fit. At
Mhm.
this point, I think retail is a pretty wide net and wouldn't include everything that might be
Mhm.
desirable, but would include a lot of things that would
Mhm.
that we might not have to come back for. And
Mhm.
you know, I don't know. It seems to me that's the wisest course of action for us to pursue tonight. Say, you know, we'd like to anticipate 2 retail uses
Mhm.
in the barn. But
Right.
what's really a more kind of acute concern for us is specifically the permission to do a professional office use in the blue building.
Mhm.
As you know, we've got some applications underway there. We've been developing construction documents, you know, silly anecdotal stuff that's actually, you know, real world concerns. These days, we've got a window order lead time that's longer than our anticipated construction timeline. So we got to buy windows already. So we'd
So the
love
blue
to
building
know.
being, right, the blue building being the Ebenezer?
It's the Ebenezer Town Shop.
Right, yeah, right. So that's the blue,
Yep.
right? Okay, yep, perfect. Mhm.
So we anticipate in the use of the blue building. So the tenant there will be Craig's daughter. Her name is Stephanie King. Her firm is called Stephanie King Design.
Yeah.
They are less than a year old and right now operating out of the spare bedroom at Stephanie's house and busting at the seams. So they need somewhere to go, and this is where we'd like them to be. Right now, that is a staff of Stephanie. She's got a manager who's there 3-4 days a week. She's got a couple of interns, so that's a total of 4 people who are not quite full-time, and she anticipates another hire. So that would be 5 people, not
Mhm.
quite full-time.
Mhm.
And the nature of the business is they will see one client at a time, perhaps a small single digits per week. It's probably
Mhm.
not going to be one client a day.
Mhm.
And it would not likely ever be a parade of one after the other after the other. It's not that
Mhm.
kind of business.
I remember you
So
last time. Mhm.
so with those needs in mind, and I understand that technically it's outside of your purview, but realistically it's within the kind of big picture for us. Our project will ultimately include a proposal for several parking spaces just west of the Ebenezer Town House at 713 and on what's currently town common land just to the west of I believe it's called Community Drive.
Mhm.
So we did I'll say that we recognized really immediately after starting to look at this project that we have a parking problem and began to conceive of and sort of sketch diagrams by which we address that. And we've settled on something that we think is both very satisfactory in serving our parcel, but also can do a kind of lovely thing to address the new common and help sort of stitch together a connection in the fabric back to the kind of historic fabric that our buildings kind of begin or I guess call it the northeast half of the fabric of the National Register District. Anyway, so that's not going to happen in the immediate future. As you know, we're planning to seek permission to do that parking just under a year from now at town meeting. In the near term, we're hoping to move Stephanie's business into the building at 7-Eleven and park in our courtyard. And that will be a bit of a strain on the courtyard. It's a substantially sort of sub-ideal spot, but it has been the only parking on the parcel ever, as far as I know, and certainly was the only parking on the parcel in '05 when this broader set of uses was allowed by special permit. In addition to the parking at our own parcel, we've identified a number of other spots, public parking available in town. You can see, if you can follow my cursor, we've got the 22 spots at the town common lot, which is a very short walk, something under a minute to our parcel. It doesn't require the crossing of any streets. I would think that would be, frankly, that's where I park most often when I go to the site. There is also what I believe are relatively new on-street parking spaces. I think it's 5 on the north side of Main Street, just immediately to the south of the common. And I think it's 8 on the south side of Main Street, just a little bit to the east. Moving a little further out, there is a number of parking spots, something like 26 at the public library. It looks like they've got about 12 spots, maybe round that up to 15 with EV and accessible spots. Forward of the officers, I should mention that the west half of this lot is reserved for police staff and officers, but the east half is public. Then at the baseball diamond, there's about 30 spots there. Also then on the north side of Main Street, a couple of other public parking lots. The Houghton, I believe, not sure how you pronounce it there in Bolton, but I'll call it the Houghton building. Looks like there are 11 spaces there, including accessible. And at Town Hall, 20 spots with 3 of them being accessible. I'll mention that we did have a brief visit with the police chief this morning, and he confirmed our count of these public spaces and did suggest that for anything at the police department, pardon me, or the Houghton building or Town Hall, it would be advisable that some sort of official arrangement be made with town if we were counting on those. So I thought that was good advice, but I don't anticipate we'd need that really ever. And let me just quickly run you through. We did 2 little, I'll call them random samples. We visited each of these lots last week, Thursday around noontime, and today around 10 a.m. Just to document what we found in terms of vacancy. So if you regard our spot as 4 spaces, 3 of those were vacant this morning. At the town common lot, and we're dismissing this Subaru because that's us. At the town common lot last Thursday at noon, there were 21 of the 22 spots were vacant and available. Today it was all 22. On the north side of Main Street, in both cases, both at noon last Thursday and 10 a.m. today, we found every one of the 6 spaces was vacant and available. On the south side, last Thursday, we found 1 was taken and 6 were available of the 7. And today, we found 2 cars and a trailer, leaving 4 of those 7 spots vacant. The baseball field, we found 27 of those spaces vacant. That was noontime on Thursday up at Town Hall. We found 8 of 23 vacant. That was pretty crowded, the most crowded we found, and then 10 of 23 vacant today. We are here at the public library, 26 spots, 20 of which were vacant on Thursday last week. 23 were available today at noontime. And at the Houghton building, there was 1 car present, leaving 10 available Thursday. Today, there were no cars, and so 11 of 11 spaces were available. And then the last one we documented, and this is, you can see these do not enter signs, so limited access for staff and officers on the other side of these signs, but up front, we've got 17 spots, and except for our car, all 17 spots are vacant and available. So based on that, and recognizing it's a random sample, it seems to me like there are many times the number of spaces that we would require available within a short walk's distance from our parcel. And given that we're in a residential district, I'm not sure what other, outside of special events, certainly, you know, the events that would take place on the common would pressure things, I imagine, all over town. But outside of special events, I don't know of a scenario that would really pressure us out of any kind of distribution of spaces. I would imagine at the town common or these 2 Main Street spots would seem to cover us more than enough.
Right. So whatever this parking end up doing, you think it'll be minimal impact in the area, and there's sufficient currently identified to cover your parking. So we have another application that we have to hear tonight. But so with that, the other thing, so in the process of the last application, we had an affordable housing unit identified. Is that plan on this property to have one affordable housing condo deeded on as part of the use?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That, my understanding is that was never, it was meant to be a condo and for sale. In my understanding, that was never sold and remained a tenant space for rent.
Okay.
And that remains the condition today.
So you're not proposing to have that as a to be sold, you're going to have it as a rental tenant, I mean, a residential tenant type of apartment unit.
We're not proposing to sell any of the units as condos.
Okay. Okay. So unless people have any other questions, I think
I have one quick question.
Yep.
Have you approached any of the town boards about your projected need for 6 spaces on common land? Have you talked it over with planning board or board of selectmen or any other groups that might be involved in taking of parkland for your parking area?
Yes, we have.
Which boards are those?
Well, we spoke with the select board. We had a Zoom call with town manager and the conservation agent and town planner Valerie Ortiz. We have presented our plans to the Historic Commission, the Economic Development Committee, and Craig, am I forgetting anybody? We've been
Tim, I
doing
think
our best
that,
to make it
I
around.
think that covers it.
Have you gotten any feedback on those meetings at this point?
Yeah, the I guess the most poignant one would be from, well, I can characterize all of them if I can briefly. The three members of the select board all voiced support. Of course, that's not, preempting all of the necessary approvals, but they, at a high level, conceptually, they found it to be a positive. Our conversation with Don and Jenny that Valerie facilitated for us was where we came to the understanding that the appropriate mechanism would probably be an easement. We had discussed other possible mechanisms such as a license agreement or others, but I think Jenny and Don advised us that the appropriate move would be to go to town meeting. So that's our plan. Again, I'm not all that comfortable putting words in other people's mouths, but the Historic Commission was pretty vocal and enthusiastic when we spoke with them. We started with the EDC, and they were also supportive.
So I just have one comment, and just to be clear, I think I love like the conceptual design you have, and I think that's really nice. Parking is super concerning for me as well. But my one comment is to consider, if you're going to utilize some of this parking, the winter situation, because a lot of these lots are not well managed if we have big storms. I'm specifically thinking about Bolton Common. I go to Kitchen Sink all the time. And when I drive there, oftentimes the parking lot is full and I can't get in there. So I'll park in the common as well. But in the winter, because it's just gravel and it's, if there's other cars parked there, it really becomes very difficult to maneuver around there. So obviously today you're not going to notice that because there's very easy to get around. But the winter becomes really difficult, especially if we have big snow. So just something to consider. And I'm sure the same thing can probably be said for the baseball field parking. To be honest, I don't even know if they technically plow that during the winter. So just something to consider.
Great.
Thank you very much. May I ask, is the town common lot plowed? Does the DPW plow it?
It is definitely plowed. I don't know if the DPW plows it. I'm assuming they do because I don't know who else would do it. But and they do plow it, but where it becomes difficult is if we have big snow, there's not super great places to put the snow. And then on top of that, people park like jerks there because it's not really well delineated. The spaces aren't well delineated.
There's no lines.
Yeah. So
lines in the drawings, but not in the field.
Right.
Yeah, so that becomes a little bit complicated. And then the only other comment I have, and then I'm done, is that some of these places, I'm sure, I'm a resident of Bolton, obviously, and like these are not even considerations I would have had for publicly parking to get to this location. So if it is something where these places would be available to utilize to walk there, it would just need to be something I think that was publicized, because especially if you're trying to draw people from surrounding towns and whatnot, like they're going to come to Bolton and be like, I have no idea where to park, and they're not necessarily going to know that they're allowed to park in certain locations. So that's just, again, the other consideration. If you're going to utilize these, it's important that we kind of just make sure that that's known that people can park in these locations.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly for the immediate future in this interior design business, that will be, staff and clients. So it'll be very easy to inform them. And then for future tenant businesses, you make a great point. But by the time those guys roll around, we will we'll know better whether we're going to be able to build these other spaces toward the common.
If you built those spaces towards the common, then technically you'd be responsible for plowing and snow removal and all that stuff of those spaces, correct?
I would anticipate that, Mr. Holmes. I think there's certainly in any kind of easement agreement, the town and Mr. Bovaird would have some details to hash out. But certainly, if I were the town, I'd say well, if you want to do this, maybe you're the guy that plows it. Who knows?
Right.
But it's
okay.
not, it won't be unaddressed one way or the other.
Right.
Mhm. Okay. So we had another hearing to start at 7 o'clock. I mean, so we're running over a little bit, but I think this is an important discussion because it's hard to fit everything into these two small meetings, half hour apart. So I think we need one more meeting, and prior to that meeting, maybe we can get a draft of a decision with the current factors, the current conditions that have been noted, the potential uses of those structures, and then at the next hearing we can finalize any questions, comments, and then review that and make a vote on that decision process. Is that amenable to the board and to the applicant?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Good for me.
Okay. Is that doable for you, Valerie?
Yes, definitely. I think I would say to the applicant, just one thing, because I was looking over what I might need prior to crafting a decision. So I think one thing that would be quite helpful would be maybe your assessment of the existing special permit and just some sort of acknowledgement of which conditions on there you would be looking for a modification to. I'm just thinking about their hours listed on there.
Right.
Different types of parameters there that you might want a little more flexibility with. So if you were able to kind of put that down in some sort of narrative, I think that would be quite helpful.
Yeah, that would be good too. I agree. Because I was doing like a table on my own, just like prior decision, current decision, and what may apply, what may not apply. And the other decision had like the affordable unit specified, and then I wasn't sure from hearing whether we would have that requirement still. So to do it right in the special permit decision, like we would need to clearly outline whatever conditions that are attached to it, because we're dealing with preliminary type of concepts. So that would be very helpful. And then I think that would expedite the next meeting to be very focused on that list, the overall project, and then we could, vote on that and sort of close the chapter on this one. So can you look at the calendar, Valerie, and give us a when you think, or I guess, Tim, when would you be able to have something like that to Valerie, and then she could sure we get it and she could incorporate it into a document. So is it a couple weeks down the road, or that we should schedule a meeting, you think, or?
We would prioritize it, and as soon as you're able and willing to meet again, we would certainly have it ready in time for that.
So Valerie, on the calendar, we have anything in mid-June? I know we have two things next week, two of the 40Bs, so that may be a busy week. And then maybe the following week or the week after.
Yeah, I will just note that it looks like we have an abutter with a raised hand.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So why don't you look at your calendar? We'll have Roland identify himself and have his comment.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Roland Oceanbine, and my wife live at 702 Main Street, which is nearby. We're across the street and down the street to the east a little bit from the from property. I just two quick comments. First of all, we have no objections to the reinstatement of the special permit for grandfather business use of all these buildings. In fact, I would say we're probably rather enthusiastically supportive. Excited to see the energy and the competency, particularly the competency being applied to the re-envisioning this property. From what I could see, the designs are tasteful, and they certainly honor the historic nature of the buildings in the surrounding area. This is, as you mentioned before, I think a National Register Historic District. As someone mentioned at the last meeting, and you talked about it today, again, there might be some tricky issues around the parking. proposals that the applicant has in terms of wanting exclusive use of parking on town property, but hopefully those issues can be negotiated in a way. And I think also relative to the septic discussion, water may be more of an important issue than septic, because particularly if there's any desire to provide food or beverage services, you need a protection zone that's quite large and that sort of thing. So that could be a tricky issue in terms of some potential retail uses, but maybe there's a way to work around that. We certainly like the desire to replace the existing condemned barn with a like structure, and we love this concept of cultural commerce as the architect had talked about, and hopefully you can provide some long-term sustainable viable uses that have relatively low sort of adverse impact to the quality of life of the surrounding neighbors in terms of traffic and noise and that sort of thing. I do have one comment, however, and that is the request, which is to please be sensitive about lighting. Recognizing that this is primarily a residential neighborhood. You've got residences close by to the east and across the common to the west and directly across the street, up and down the street, including us down the street. The town has good lighting guidelines that I hope are followed as the designs for the renovation and the upgrade of this property take place. They can be found in Article 5 of the bylaw, Section 250-23. Under the business, commercial, and industrial regulations. And they talk about building an area lighting for any business, commercial, industrial, or non-residential private use to be arranged so that they direct light away from any street and from any premises residentially used. That the applicant shall coordinate lighting fixture assembly that's appropriate to the surrounding architecture, exterior lights mounted in such a way that they are down, shielded and downlit. They're good guidelines. Light overspill that shouldn't create discernible shadowing without instruments on residentially zoned premises. And probably most importantly, that the lighting be reduced to that minimally necessary for security and safety overnight, during non-business hours. That's probably, at least in my mind, probably the most important part of it, if lights can be turned down or lowered after 10 or 11 o'clock. So those are my comments. Again, we're in support, excited about this, and hopefully some good things can happen, and just be sensitive to the fact that it's a tight-in primarily residential neighborhood. So,
good points, and I'm sure the applicant will consider those lighting concerns.
We've done a lot of work in dark sky towns, and would certainly be, we haven't yet gotten to the point where we're looking at the lighting in particular, but we're very familiar with full cutoff lighting and dark sky compliance. And when we're ready to get into that, we'll absolutely dig into the bylaw and make sure that we're going to be a good neighbor there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Roland. So Valerie, are you able to look at your calendar?
Yeah, so I think the first time I'd be available would be Wednesday, June 15. Otherwise, we would need to go the week after that.
Okay. How about the board? Is the board available June 15th?
I cannot do the 15th.
Not good for me either.
Okay, so what'll be the next week, Valerie?
I could go to the Thursday, the 16th.
That
No.
will not work for me either, sorry.
Okay, the next week would be Tuesday, the 21st.
That works for me.
That's good.
All right.
Okay.
So does that work, Liz? And because it's a Tuesday, so it would be after 6:30 or?
Yeah, actually, lacrosse ends the prior week, so I become open again.
All right. So
That's the
6:30
last
would
day of
be a good-
school, so it'll be a celebratory day.
So 6:30 would be a good time.
Yes, that's totally fine.
Gabrielle, that work for you?
So I'm actually going to be on vacation that whole week and the following week, but I think you guys can do it without me.
Okay. And if there was an issue, we could always, if we're going to vote that night, it'd be different. But yeah, okay. So as long as we have a full board, then we should be good. So we have a motion to continue to 6:21 at 6:30.
I motion to continue on 6/21 at 6:30.
All right.
6/21 at 6:30.
Second.
Okay.
And those in favor, Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes,
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes,
and Liz Hutchins.
Yes.
perfect.
Great.
Okay, so we'll continue this on June 21st, 6:30. Thanks, folks, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we'll jump right into the next hearing, and when the screen refreshes there. So Val, do we need to do a roll call for this next one as well? Or is it stand from the previous one?
Yes, it stands. Yep.
Okay.
But you would have to
Read
read the
the
public hearing notice. Yeah, would you like me to pull that for you?
Yes, please. Okay, so in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 31st, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom video communications to hear and act upon the application of Thomas Broomfield. The applicant seeks a special permit to expand or alter the pre-existing non-conforming uses and structures at 113 Still River Road in Bolton's residential zoning district identified on Assessors Map 6A, also 5, containing plus or minus 1.1 acres. The applicant seeks to convert a portion of the existing office space into an additional apartment without expanding the existing footprint to the structure pursuant to Section 250-C, Section 250-11, and Section 250-12 of the Code of Town of Bolton. So the public hearing will be conducted via remote participation, and the details were provided on our website. So with that, why don't we jump right into it? First thing I want to do is apologize to Tom Brownfield for the delay in the other hearing. We scheduled two back-to-back. We had a preliminary hearing where we had some of the information, but trying to iron out the details on that project took a little extra time to get us set up. So we're not going to cut into your time. You can take whatever time you need, but I apologize for being a little late.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
No problem.
It's not a problem. It's my daughter, Corinne Molesky. She also lives in Bolton, and she
Hi, Corinne.
has a commercial design background, and so I asked her to help me out. She gives me advice on some of the things I'm doing. So
Nice.
I want to thank you for having this meeting. This property we've owned for I guess 30 plus years. It's been a lot of things over its history. I thought it might be interesting to you. I listed a few of the things that it has been, including a ski tow in the beginning, an ice cream stand, a restaurant, a craft shop, a used furniture and furniture stripping place, safety equipment sales, a realty office, then our sales, service, and engineering office, and then currently my personal office here. So anyways, we would like to take a portion of the office that we have.
But it also has existing apartment units there, apartment space as well. When did those?
When it was a restaurant back in the, well, I think I'm not sure if the ice cream stand had it. Mr. Davis from the Bolton Orchards told me about they pulled the ice cream stand out of there and towed it over on this property. And the woman that ran it, I'm not sure if she lived in the place at that point, but there was some old history there. It has, when I was a teenager and well, when I attended Emerson School, it was a restaurant, and the people running the restaurant lived in it. So goes back years. So that apartment still exists.
Okay.
It's all redone since then, but
Okay. So it's clearly before the existing bylaws for
Yeah, no, zone,
residential or commercial, and not mixed use. And
correct, yeah.
okay.
What is the current zone that it is in? Is it a residential zone? It's primarily at this point?
Yes, it's residential, pre-existing non-conforming commercial use. I have a building up the street that is pre-existing non-conforming industrial use.
Yeah, that's across the street into the closer to the Bolton
harbor.
flats.
Yeah, right.
Right. Mhm, mhm.
So, so we would like to add a single bedroom apartment in the back. I think it's about 700 square feet. It's a nice space. It's a nice quiet area. There's a use for or a need for apartments in town, just to the general public as well as my own family. It's always a thing that is needed. So I would appreciate your consideration on that. I don't know if there's any questions you might have.
So I think in your application, you mentioned that currently in the office, there's up to five people working in that space, or I'm just trying.
No, we used to have in that particular space that we want to use for the apartment, I probably had a max of 6 or 7 people in there. In the whole building, I have to think we probably had 15 so in the building.
Right. So so the impact, looking at like the impact on the town, or
Right. Yeah.
Whether it be like if you want to expand it to a different use and much more parking, it's conceivable that you're going to have less impact on the town because it'll be
Right, 1 or 2
bedroom apartment versus 5, 6 to 7 or whatever,
Yeah,
other cars coming in for employees and things like that. So
correct.
so whatever use you're going to use, if it were an apartment, the impact would probably stay on your property as it currently does anyway.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of parking here.
Yeah, if anything, it would reduce based on what you're saying in terms of commuting.
Right. So as we speak, when we talk about granting a special permit, we have to consider why the denied relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and then why the relief can be granted without nullifying or derogating from the intent of our bylaws. So part of the second answer is it's already pre-existing non-conforming use, and you already have apartment use within that, so it's just changing office to apartment. But dealing with the substantial detriment public good, if it were to, whatever you were going to propose was going to create a more traffic congestion down, say, at 110, 117 intersection where that is and things, we consider that, just like on that other application that you maybe heard a little bit about it, parking is a concern when they're looking to expand the retail uses within those 3 properties, so we're trying to get our hands around that, so. Any board members have any questions? Valerie, can you show the
septic issues?
Oh, sorry,
Are there
Andy.
any septic issues related to the conversion?
I'm sorry, septic? No, we put in a new septic system a few years back, and the existing apartment is a 2-bedroom, and we put in a septic for a 3 plus the commercial use. So I tentatively, talked to Bill Brookings about it, and we looked at the plans at the town hall there, and he's, without officially saying it, he didn't see a problem. So it should be fine, and there's a new well there about the same time as well.
Thanks.
So to the extent that that require, anything came up with that as you get permitted, you'd have to take care of that, obviously. So, but if you're
Yes.
not anticipating that, like you have capacity at the moment. Mhm.
I'd be very much surprised if Bill had a problem, but I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's still his prerogative, but
Mhm.
tentatively, he thought it was fine. He wanted to run the calculations, but
Mhm.
on it, but just to
Mhm.
seem good.
Makes sense. Harry, can you bring up the proposed layout that he had with the with Mr. Brown application so that we can just give it a peek through and everyone has a chance to ask questions on it? Mhm. So everyone's familiar with this structure, driving down by Bolton Orchards in 117, 110.
Correct. So it would be the bottom left
Mhm.
uh, is where it would be going. And the existing office, I'm
Mhm.
going to point to it, but it doesn't work that way. The existing office would ran back along in that what was existing office. So that's where we had the 6 people back there. The projection, which is on the Bolton Orchard side, that's proposed for a bedroom, we use for a computer, server room. So that would become a bedroom.
Mhm.
There's the door in that, the exterior door there is existing, and the one in the back is existing as well. So there is an existing, when we purchased the building inspector wanted a firewall between the apartment and the office, and that is in place. That goes
Mhm.
right to the roof shingles, and that would just continue where we're separated from the existing office in the front to what would be the apartment. We would just extend that wall there.
All the exterior egresses are currently in place, so nothing would be changing on the exterior.
Right.
So really, it's just that on the sort of sketch that Valley has here, pretty much just the left side of that would, be just added the additional bedroom, right? A bedroom and a kitchen and a bathroom, and that's the modifications to
Right,
Yeah.
be a plumbing change because we
Mhm.
didn't have water back there or sewer. So that
Mhm.
would be changed, but that of course is up to the plumbing inspector to, approve that once a permit has been issued.
Mhm.
But
So
yeah,
when it's done, you'd have approximately, 20, it looks like a little bit over 2,000 square foot of between apartments, and then would just be the remaining 1975 square foot of office.
Right.
Mhm.
Commercial space for whatever, yes.
Right. Mhm. And it's all staying within the same footprint, right?
Correct.
Same footprint.
in terms of maintenance too, I just want to mention that, we live in town. Dad lives one house away. So it's certainly something where he's going to be very present in maintaining it and having a presence.
Right. Yeah. Right. A present landlord versus an absentee, sometimes that could be problematic, but yeah, that's good. Certainly has done a good job with, my history in town with the zoning board whenever, identifies the need to ask for relief, certainly does it professionally and takes care of that. So I don't anticipate changing that. Yeah. So Valerie, for your purposes, if we were to, based on the fact pattern that we have tonight, and the substantial conformity of the stuff, do we need to do a similar, like potentially have a second continuation so that it gives you time to put together the draft decision that we could then vote on at the next hearing?
You could, oh, sorry, I don't know if that feedback's on my end or yours. You could opt to close the public hearing with a special permit that allows 90 days to get back with a decision, though it won't take me that long. But if you do opt to close, we could, it'll just depend on when I am able to put together a draft decision, which could be, we have a couple of meetings coming up in the next week, or it could be later on in June as well. So
right, yeah. Well, only I asked because we during this Zoom time, we in prior period world, we may have made a motion to approve on the same night and then draft the decision thereafter. So preferential is it to you say unless we're going to get additional information or people have questions for when we review the draft decision, we could keep it open, just continue it to a date where, potentially even if it's that same night that we're having, June, what did we do?
yeah, that last one's June 21st.
First, if we did a second one on that one, if you could go for that, we could continue them.
Yeah.
We could draft the decision, we could vote on it that night and it'd be all sort of buttoned up. Does that work for you, Mr. Bromfield?
I would appreciate as much expedition on it as you could. We were going to meet in the first part or by the middle of May, and now it's the end of May. So, I'm anxious to where I'm going on the property. So,
yeah, right. Yeah, we're not trying to delay it.
Yes,
We got two 40B applications, which are comprehensive permits that we have to wrap up likely within the next 2 weeks as well. We have draft decisions on those we're reviewing. We've got that other special permit we're trying to marshal along as well as this new one. So we certainly think that second hearing would be able to probably wrap it up and make the decision. And with the draft decision, they'll be able to very fast turn it around after that if there's any edits to it or not.
okay. Does
So-
anybody else have questions or?
I don't. I'm good.
Okay. So so the last one was going to be at for 6:30. So do you want to give ourselves time and make it 7:15 on 6/21?
Okay.
That way we don't.
Either that or do you want to do it at 6? Is that since we don't have Liz doesn't have lacrosse anymore?
Oh, well,
That works for me.
that works because we probably won't have as much work conditions or anything given, this is pretty well documented. Okay, so why not 6 p.m. on June 21st, was it?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So if we can get a motion for that, then we can wrap up this for tonight.
I make a motion that we continue the meeting until 6:21 at 6 p.m.
Perfect, thanks, guys.
Second.
Okay.
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kitchitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes,
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Yes.
All right.
yeah, perfect. All right, so we'll continue that and hopefully we may wrap this up hearing, Mr. Bromfield.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right.
Thank you.
So tonight I won't rush to close my screen and we can do our administration items. Mhm.
Yes, we have 2 versions of minutes. Let me know if anyone has any questions on those.
I wasn't at either one of the meetings, so I guess I don't
So those
have
are-
an opinion. So I don't have an opinion. I looked at them both and saw that I was absent at both of them.
Oh, you have an opinion, come on, right. Uh-huh. So, those are the 3:15 and the 4:06 minutes. I know I had forwarded my comments to Valerie earlier, any edits. And other than that, making edits, I was comfortable with them. Do people have a chance to read them, or does Valerie need to bring them up on the screen?
I'm good.
You're good? I'm good. Brian's good, because he has no opinion.
I got caught up though. They were good to read.
Yeah.
I think on the first one, I think just had one, I saw the word sizes was incorrect. It's not spelled correctly. I don't know if Gerard caught that one.
I haven't been able to look at Jared's edits yet, so perhaps.
Oh.
What page was it on?
I think it was on page 2. Trying to pull it up now.
On 3:15?
Yes. About halfway down the page, both of the units be of one of the 2 sizes. The paragraph starts off with Bradley Reed asks. And on the 4th line, the word sizes needs to be changed.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I have nothing else though.
Thanks, Andy.
I'm gonna have you proofread my proposals, Andy.
Mhm.
That's sad though. I just looked for the area where it has my name because I don't want to be misquoted. That's where we used to rely on Kate.
Yeah. It's the case Stoner role, but yeah. Especially, she was a writer. So any other comments from anyone that people still reviewing them? Yay, someone give us a.
No, that's my cat.
Oh,
Like,
well.
my husband's traveling for work this week, so it's like kids and cats and dogs, just a mess.
We need
I have-
separate motions to accept them both, or
It can be the same.
Yep.
I
As
make
long as
motion to
everyone
accept
acknowledges that.
both of the meeting
Fine.
minutes.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't think I caught that.
Okay. Andy, motion to accept the minutes, I guess without it, if there's any edits, certainly they'll be included. So do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, perfect.
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes,
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so I guess all we need is that's the rest of the meeting, then I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
Make a
I will
motion, we
motion that
adjourn.
we adjourn. There we go. Second.
All right, thanks, Brad, thanks, Brian.
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Elizabeth Hutchins, and Gabrielle Romano. Great.
Perfect.
Can someone, when are the next meetings? I know, so we have this one on the 21st, and then what else do we have?
We have the 6th and the 7th next week.
We have the 7th.
Yes.
240
Okay, so-
Bs.
I won't be there for that one. I do not remember discussing that at all. When did we decide on that one? I mean, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. I can't attend that one though. So
Which one? And the 6th is,
The 6th is Mallard Lane. I had thought that we said the 7th would be 580 Main. I can go back and look at those,
Mhm.
the video.
yeah, I remember talking about it, but for some reason I did not register that it.
yeah, I don't have it down either. It's kind of weird, but
I have it in my calendar.
Oh.
okay.
580 Main, 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
it was-
I'm,
it was-
I'm fine with, I can do the 7th. So that's fine.
Okay.
If I miss that one, is that that's the only one I've missed for 580 Main then?
Yes, I don't have my list in front of me, but I don't know if you are a voting member on that one.
I'm not,
Okay,
but if I
so-
just because of backup or whatever, if
Oh, I
I only
see.
miss one, then it counts. So I'll fill out one of those forms, I guess, for that meeting when it happens.
Sure.
Mhm.
Or if it doesn't matter, I don't know.
I'm
Go for
not
Go
available
Valley
on the
Hub.
6th, but that's not one that I'm voting on anyhow.
Right.
Right, that one's Mallard Lane at 6:30.
Mhm. Right. In the 580 Main was at 6:30 as well, or was at 6?
I think that was 6 p.m. Yeah.
All right.
I'll hope to get something of a draft together. I'm only like 2 or 3 pages in right now. There's a lot of other things, a few other deadlines in June that I'm contending with. So we'll see how far I get. I'll hope to give you guys something before Tuesday.
Did the on the 580 Main, did the applicant collaborate at all? There was talk.
No, I'm not used to that. So no, I have not asked for that. We'll see, but I think if they can provide comment on the conditions we put in there, if they're not going to put up anything. So
Right, but did they submit anything to you, or will they be saying, here's what we propose as the draft conditions that you could, layer in, and then we could, but again, we were just gonna work. We have collaborated in the past on decisions, but that doesn't mean if you feel comfortable handling it, then that's great,
Do we have a revised list of waivers that they were going to send along? Has that come through, or are we?
I don't believe so. I think, and we can't get into too much discussion right now, but I don't believe I've seen anything new since the last public hearing. I could be wrong. I'll check my files at some point. But yes, so Gerard, to your point, they have not submitted any conditions at this point. So I'm just going forward.
That's fine. So we,
Yeah.
as I say, we're sort of skirting, into the next hearing. So at least for purposes of admin, we know our dates, June 6th and June 7th. So we'll leave it at that, and you'll keep us posted if there's something for us to review in advance.
That sounds
Right.
good.
All right, thanks, folks.
All right.
Everyone have a good
Thanks.
weekend.
Thanks,
The rest of the
everybody.
week.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.